Welcome to today's episode of the podcast where we delve into the latest installments of a different series every show. Today we're discussing Disney's new series, Star Wars Skeleton Crew. The first two episodes were released December 2nd and focus on 4 kids who get lost in space. This happens after the events of Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and that's it. That's the bar this series has set for itself. Very little expectation, and that is different because up until now, I feel like every live-action Star Wars series that we've gotten has been a feat of desperation. Let's go through them real quick. Ahsoka was a live-action remake of a beloved cartoon, right?
Yeah, the Clone Wars.
From the 2000s. And so there was a lot of expectation there. Mandalorian, the first live-action Star Wars show ever.
Flagship for Disney+.
Meant to not only helm Star Wars the universe and the franchise, but also Disney+. Get them into the streaming market, compete with Netflix.
And those two that you just mentioned really fast are set in the same time frame as Star Wars: The Skeleton Crew.
Good note. The Book of Boba Fett, who is like, I guess, the most famous anti-hero outside of Vader in the Star Wars universe, probably Boba Fett.
But
And so they made a show about him, and that probably had a lot of expectation and fans waiting for that. Kenobi, it's like you get the most famous guy from the prequels, Ewan McGregor.
Yep.
Probably not Darth Vader. They weren't going to bring him back except for maybe in the 8th film to say something in like The Mist. But yeah, Kenobi, huge expectations. Andor, prequel to the best Star Wars movie of the last decade. And I will fight anyone who wants to argue that.
That is the highest, I think, rated Rotten Tomatoes score, and also has a huge IMDb score as well.
Right,
I was
that
shocked
one,
to see
I'm not
that.
saying whether or not these were successful, but I am saying that they were desperate because they really needed to be successful.
Yes.
In order to pay off. An Acolyte. Acolyte, you might be able to say, is kind of like this in that there was no story that was pre-known to it.
But the amount of budget that they put in every episode.
Almost the most expensive series of all time. It was meant to redefine the lore. So no pressure there, right? Yeah, that fell on its face. So this show comes about, and I feel like, there might be an expensive budget as well, probably. But it's a kid's show. And people know that going in. And so you have 4 unknowns and Jude Law, and there's room to breathe. People aren't coming in there critics aren't coming in there with their knives drawn. They are giving it, and I think the writers knew that. And I think that's why they chose to go the direction they did. And there were less egregious references or corny, cringy dialogue. And it was more just giving it a chance to make a name for itself. So I'm going to come out early and say, I really enjoyed the show. I think it's one of the best kids shows of this year. And I have a ton of comparisons, but mostly Spaceballs.
Spaceballs?
I mean, I'm kidding about Spaceballs, except for the fact that it does focus on 2 friends of 2 guys and then 2 girls, right? And then they aren't necessarily love interests at the beginning. I don't think that's where they're going with this kids show, but I do like that it translates over.
I agree with you. I think that it wasn't like Easter egg riddled as much as like all the other Star Wars are, or trying to just push in as many references as possible.
I think it did have a ton of references. I think from him using the same milk that Luke Skywalker uses.
There's small things
from the girl being Fern introduced, changing a droid's memory. Without using the Force. The first scene being a fight scene where they're going through one of the ships and you see laser battles and stuff like there are a lot of reflections back to the original series, but I think it also it doesn't need them to be good. Like, it's just doing them to pay homage as opposed to trying to get people to buy merchandise.
At times, it felt like I was watching an episode of The Orville. Felt like somewhat a parody of the Star Wars shows, which isn't a bad thing.
Well, feels, if I had to compare it to 3 different things, I would say The Goonies meets Star Wars meets Sliders. Sliders is the old 80s TV show where they get lost from their home planet and they spend the rest of the series trying to get back to their universe.
My 3 things would be the Big Door Prize, Black Mirror, and even something like the Mysterious Benedict Society. When they're inside that classroom, the kids, that was almost straight out from the Mysterious Benedict Society, and talking about how a test would like make your life. That's where I'm getting the Big Door Prize.
A lot of young adult fiction likes to do that thing where it's like The City of Ember or Divergent, where like you reach a certain age, probably like 12 12 years old, and then suddenly you take a work test to say what you were going to be for the rest of your life. They used to actually give them out in school, not as a serious like, oh, this is where you're headed, but almost kind of like a horoscope where it's like, if we had to guess where your interest lies. In this case, though, it's really interesting the twist they show us in episode 2, why the world that they're from at Aden is set up that way. Because it's sort of, I don't want to call it socialist, but it's definitely like everybody has their own job to do. And if they do it and they don't look at the sky, then everything's going to be great.
I got pre-war Fallout from that.
Yeah,
kind of Fallout
I got
vibes.
Fallout as well because the great work, because it's like utopia.
Yes.
Right? So like if you don't look outside, just if you don't look at the rest of space, then you are in an awesome place. And just like in Fallout, where the main character was suddenly, I would say like kind of Fern, where she's kind of bored.
Yeah.
I would say the main character in Fallout, what's her name?
Oh,
It's been a while. They both decide that they need to go out on an adventure. And even though they're both trying to get back eventually, I guess that's where it starts to become different, because she's going out on an adventure in Fallout because she's looking for her dad.
But I was talking more about the game, like Fallout 4. Do you remember at the very beginning, you're kind of stuck in that very nice society? I thought that Star Wars Skeleton Crew, where the main character...
It's just a suburbia. That's why I thought you were comparing it to Big Prize Door, because that's also in suburban markets. And people are also bored with their lifestyle.
Yes.
But I do want to compare it to a few more things real quick.
Okay.
There are certain kids' adventure fantasy shows and movies that, like, they can be cringy or they can level up and become something classic. Dark Crystal, I would say, became a classic. Stranger Things, classic. Super 8, sort of a classic, right?
Kind of. It was that Super 8, I feel like, was more trying to pay homage to the classics.
Yeah, but... Well, how about Percy Jackson and the Olympians? Because that came out almost a year ago from today. And what did you think of the kid characters in that compared to the kid characters in this?
I actually think I like the kid characters in this
I
more.
feel like they're less cringy.
Yes.
Like there's less of that adult written dialogue forcing them.
Well, that was a big pro for me. Obviously,
Wizard.
This is the first Disney Plus Star Wars shows that's kind of targeted toward kids, but I think that adults can enjoy it just as much.
All of the Disney Star Wars shows are targeted towards kids. They just don't.
This is the most obvious, though. I mean, again, the main characters are kids themselves.
Yeah, but they don't have to lean into it, you know? Like, they can show kids being silly without having to, I don't know, the Elephant Kid, for instance. Like, I'm glad that they were able to make that into less of a jokey character and actually have a personality.
Do you know who Neil was?
Like a person? Like what their
the
voice?
Actor.
I don't know.
You remember Dear Santa, the Apple TV movie that just came out?
The Jack Black movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the main kid in that.
Okay. Yeah, no, great. He's an elephant. He's an elephant kid. And was he your favorite?
Probably out of all of them, yeah.
For real. Okay. I did like Fern, even though I found her to be Discount Ray.
Fern, I think, is kind of the leader of the group now.
Absolutely. But we'll get there in 1 second, because I do want to compare it to 3 other series or 3 other things real quick. Space Pirates. You know, there's a lot of space pirates. It's felt a little bit like Guardians of the Galaxy, Final Space, because there's literally a Wolfman.
Yeah.
And then, it wasn't like a Catman in Final Space, and then, or several cat people, and Pirates of the Caribbean. That's an easy one, because they go in the second episode to a Tortuga.
I mean, it's literally called
plate.
The Skeleton Crew. So, yeah, you have the same.
That's true. Yeah, the Skeleton Key, Skeleton Crew. And there's also the same joke where in, I think, the first movie of Pirates of the Caribbean, they try to get the dog. Jack tries to get the dog to break him out by getting the keys.
With the keys, yeah.
And in this, when they get all stuck in the jail cell, they try to get that mouse thing that was living in the robot to get the key, and then the mouse just runs away.
Another comparison, kind of obvious, because SM33 is supposed to be like Mr. Smee, the boatswain of Captain Hook, but Peter Pan you can throw in there as well.
That's cool. I hope they fix him up a bit so that he's like a little smarter.
I enjoyed hearing Nick Frost. In fact, people were calling him scene stealing.
Yeah. I mean, the robots tend to be, and they need to give them some sort of really important voice in order to make a name for themselves.
Well,
otherwise they're stuck being C-3POs, and I think a little C-3PO goes a long way.
That is true, but it connects with Simon Pegg, who was in the 7th movie as Uncle Platt. So people were making that connection as well.
Absolutely. So the first episode here is called This Could Be a Real Adventure. Not the best title, I would say. It's kind of clunky. Kids from Ordinary Planet discover a surprising secret, and that secret is a spaceship which originally one of the kids, Wim, thinks is a Jedi temple. So
Right.
Wim or Fern, who is the actual main character of this series?
Wim.
You would
I would
say
say
Wim.
Wim. Yes.
Because we do see it from both their points of view. Wim comes first, but Fern, I would say, is the more mature, although more evil of the two of them. She certainly is a liar, and she is top of her class, but she's, I don't know, her character
I'm not
is
sure if I'd say she was evil as much as she just seems kind of like a delinquent.
Yeah, but like her mom is the president of the school or something. Like she's a very, and again, she's like valedictorian. So those two don't meld exactly, but that's what makes her character interesting. What is the world that they're living in? We kind of stated a suburban area where they have buses and sidewalks and things you would not expect from Star Wars.
So a quick question, because after the beginning scene, we are introduced to Wim, and he's holding two figures, like a Jedi and a Sith Lord, and he's making them fight with
Spaceballs.
With toys. True. But I was wondering if that brought you back to when you were a kid.
It brought me back just to the Spaceball scene. It literally did. It also reminded me, I was like, why do they have action figures here? And then I'm like, in the first or in the fourth movie, right?
Right.
That's where they're watching TV and they're playing chess and all the holograms and stuff. And of course, they would still have action figures. But then when you learn the secret in episode 2, it makes more sense why this world exists, why they could make plastic in this manner that, that is much more realistic to today's world.
Right.
One of my few cons, is that their version of this utopia is just Seattle. You know?
Seattle?
It's rainy. It's green. Yeah, society seems like it's doing okay. There's a Space Needle. Like at one point, and I saw it in the second viewing of the episode, I was like, oh, there's a Space Needle in the background. This is just Seattle.
I didn't even catch it.
What if it is? What if it's just the future of Seattle? Or it's a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's in the way past.
Right.
So Seattle's had a Space Needle for a very long time. Okay. And so, Wim is the main character. He's this kid. He's going to class. He's also not really paying attention to the fact that this big test is coming around.
Right.
He stumbles upon, or he's late for class the next day, right? And that's where he tries to take a shortcut that he saw Fern take the day beforehand, finds this spaceship, doesn't know it's a spaceship, gets picked up by one of the droids who was looking for him.
Yeah, because the droid thinks that he's skipping school.
Give that droid a raise, because that droid went out in the middle of nowhere and found him uber quickly. I mean, the kid just yelled help, and then there the droid was. Like, absolutely. Good job, droid. So he goes to the office, and lo and behold, that's where our other main character, Fern, is there. All we've seen from her is that she lies to her mom about going to school. She's really smart, and she likes to do street racing like Anakin and like a ton of these different Star Wars characters.
Going back to the parents in this show, it felt like they were either Charlie Brown, because you see that Wim is just getting hounded by his dad, or it felt like they were Stephen King characters where they were just evil, as you mentioned, Fern with kind of the her mom.
Fern might be my favorite kid character, but the dad is, I think, my favorite character of the whole series.
Wait, what?
Because
I thought it was the worst character of all.
He's so bad at the beginning because he's a workaholic, but in his kids' point of view, who are watching it through, he just is obsessed with work. He's okay with getting his kid out of trouble for being late to class, but doesn't listen to him talk about how he found a Jedi temple. And then what's worse is when he's like, you have to prepare for this test, and they're letting you take it again, but with a 50-point disadvantage. So you have to get every question on the test right to even pass. What parent would agree to those terms? And have they never heard of a sick person? Like, does sickness not exist in this school? Because every other kid was there, and you're telling me that there's never been an instance where a kid gets to remake a test?
So there was a crazy, crazy coincidence here, because actually I did have a friend in college that had to agree to one of those terms with a test.
College.
And also when he was running late for class, it reminded me of when I was a sophomore in college. I forgot they had rescheduled the class 40 minutes prior to when it usually was.
This is what I mean by like it appealing to everyone, is that there were a lot of instances by making this take place in the suburbs and just like a regular non-apocalyptic environment where you could put yourself in the characters
connected
more than you could Leia and Luke and all of them.
I connected to Wim because I remember I had to run through campus and I got there 15 minutes late for the final, but was still able to take the test. So
Yeah.
I understood
Everybody's
where
had
Wim
that
was
story
coming
where
from.
they've been late for a test.
Yeah.
My thing is that if you're a kid and you miss class and you have a legitimate reason, you got stuck in the middle of the woods, that they would not then allow you to just take the test later that day or the next day. Why he would be stuck. I would just repeat the year at that point. Like, why bother even studying? If the best you can do is just pass bare minimum, that can't even get you a good job.
Yeah.
Just retake the year. I know you're not going to be with your elephant friend, but whatever. So yeah, he meets with Fern. Fern already shows that she's lying. She's like, oh, there's this scary place they take kids under the school of mine that they're forced to work at if they fail the test. And then so he goes home, but instead of studying, he goes back to the Jedi Temple where they start to dig it up and he gets his friend. And that's where Fern and her friend, Katie's also pretty cool. She's got like those goggles and she's tapped in. She's not like a droid person, but she does have she's like the tech girl. And she's also way nicer than Fern. They do tease the boys.
Did they figure out about the thing first? Because
no, so when Fern and Wim were at the office, right, and Wim starts going on a tangent about how he found a Jedi temple in the woods, she kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Okay, so that's
and then went and found it with her bud, and all 4 of them end up opening this thing, going inside, and finding just like a dilapidated old droid, and they end up pulling the wrong lever. The whole ship turns on. Turns out it wasn't a mountain after all. It was actually just a ship that's been covered for many, many years. And just as Wim's dad comes out searching for him, that's when the ship explodes from the Earth, or sorry, whatever planet at Atkins that they're on, and it goes up in the sky.
Yeah,
and
Wim flips the switch.
Yeah, and the dad doesn't freak out. He's just like, Wim, get down here. It's the funniest thing. Honestly, one of my favorite scenes of any kid show that I've seen this year. And so he, in the second episode, when the droids pick him up and he's like, I saw this spaceship leave the area. And they're like, spaceships aren't allowed to leave this planet. And then I really want to follow that track because with Sliders, they left their homeworld and we never really saw the parents' point of view or anybody. That would be really funny. And so I kind of want to see what happens here with just back at home, what the mom of Fern is going to do, and then also what his dad.
I thought the biggest cons was focusing on the parents as a B story.
It's so funny though. First of all, they don't. In the second episode, he has 30-second scene. So that doesn't count.
Yes, it's short. It's short.
In the second episode is, I think, better than the first episode. It's shorter. The first episode sets up the world, but then they leave it, and so you get more into the traditional Star Wars universe.
Right. So are we going to get a Avatar: Last Airbender Cowboy Bebop where it's every single episode they go to a different world?
We don't know yet.
That's my question.
Yeah, but the fact that they don't feel the need to rush us through a story. By now, I think part of the problem with the Acolyte was they tried to just ram in all these different things going on and just expect you to keep up with it. And it was a lot of boring stuff. This, you're just on a journey with these kids. And like Stranger Things, you're kind of experiencing it through their eyes. And because everybody sees them as kids, they're also treated different. The robot is messed up in the head. So he thinks that Fern is the captain.
Well, Fern is able to manipulate him into thinking that she killed the captain. Right. So suddenly
they're up in space.
To her.
They've gone through hyperspeed, and that's when the droid shows up trying to take them out because he's a pirate. But then she convinces him, like you're saying, that she killed the captain, so she's the new captain. That's from Star Wars, right? I'm the captain now, Star Wars. And so that's when they end up going, because the droid doesn't know how to take them home, to the Tortuga planet, or I think it's called Bargo or Brago.
It's Port Borgo.
Borgo. And so that's supposed to be this pirate village. And I like how it was depicted because they showed you enough to make you see that it was, but they didn't have to overkill. They weren't doing what Dune did, where it was like, oh, look, after the wedding, we're going to approach this kind of like brothel and just have people having sex and stuff like it's a kid's show. So instead, you do see one brothel lady come over and she's like, "Are you kids? You got to get out of here."
Yeah, she actually tries to help them.
Yeah, but as soon as they start mentioning that they're from Atkin, everybody gives them a weird look. And I like that. I thought that was it was a really good twist that not just we got Jude Law at the end of the episode, but also we learn that the place that they're from, they're in El Dorado. They're in Treasure Planet. They're at a place, they're at a utopia that no one knows how to get back to. So good luck for them. That's a real dilemma. And it's not world breaking. It's not like the end of the universe happens like traditional Star Wars is with the Jedi and the Force and all that jazz. But like this provides an opportunity that does still feel like the stakes are high enough for these kids to want to, their survival depends on it.
It explains the second episode's name, Way, Way Out Past the Barrier.
Yeah. Just like with Walking Dead, you know, they had that barrier where everything was good inside the colony, but outside, wait, the colony was the one where they ate people, didn't it? No, that was Terminus. Okay. Yeah. So I do like that. And I also like that they didn't escape Borgo or Bargo or whatever.
You like that they got tied up or
because
in jail?
It would have been unrealistic and kind of just like, oh, it's one of these shows where they're just always getting away with stuff, even though they're for juveniles.
I also, I like the scene where Whammy tries to pay for like some food that they were given, and then it turns out that the money that he's using, it's like this insane amount.
Right. I almost suspected that when in the first scene that we saw with him, his dad just drops a ton of coins. I was like, oh, they're showing that this family is like rich, or at least where they are is like very well off.
Right.
And I thought it was really smart of him. Like his main smart move, because he's the one who gets them in all this, because he kept pushing buttons and saying it wasn't his fault, but like to hide the coins. No one else suggests that. He does. As soon as that monkey thing like took off with two of them, he was like, oh, these are kind of a big deal here. So yeah, now they're in custody with what happened with the crew that we saw in the first scene, which we didn't really talk about. But in the first scene, there was a pirate crew that broke into a ship, and their captain was promising all this gold and stuff. They open up the door of these credits, and there was one credit in there, and the mutiny happens. And I thought that was Jude Law at first. I guess it was not. Jude Law is a Jedi who is in the brig with the kids, and he helps them, I guess, escape at the end of the second episode, or is about to. And in the first episode, I thought it was cool because kind of like in Guardians of the Galaxy, you did get a personality of this pirate crew. They are evil, but they're not the most evil.
I feel like the only personality that you got of that whole crew is who they are making the main villain, that beast-looking guy.
Well, do you think they killed the captain?
No.
Because I think he may return. And there's like a 10% chance of me thinking he actually was Jude Law.
You said it's Jude Law. I think that is a very big possibility. We never see the captain's face. He's wearing like a mask. I thought he was a robot at first, honestly.
Yeah. The thing about it being Jude Law, though, we've seen the story a lot. They've done this in Star Wars where you have the embattled, or like kind of with Kenobi, where it's the Jedi who's been beaten down, right?
Yes.
I don't know if there's that many pirate Jedis. So it would be weird also when he's like, mutiny it is, and he starts fighting everybody. He doesn't use the Force. If you're a Jedi, wouldn't you be using the Force?
And that's how he reveals in the second episode that he is a Jedi. He uses the Force to get the keys to get them out.
But it would be a cool twist, and I can totally see it doing this, where it's revealed later on that he just knows how to use the Force, but he's not technically a Jedi. Like that, I mean, the Acolyte was able to do it. I don't think he's a dark side guy, but like, who knows, you know?
I know that Jude Law, he agreed to do it because he said that he grew up with the films, and the fact that it was centered on children, he felt a connection in that way. So, and also it seems like he's going to be, and I'm glad about this, a secondary character, because from the poster, it made it look like he was going to be the main character of the whole series.
Ahsoka and, Boba Fett, the Mandalorian, it's always like one guy, Kenobi, Andor, always one dude. This is the first time I feel like it's just shelve that guy to the second episode and make it about the kids.
And that's what I was happiest about. That was my biggest pro.
I can totally see having the exact opposite, like, criticism, though, if this show had turned out bad, if the dialogue had been terrible, if the plot had been terrible. I'm like, you have Jude Law, and you decided to focus on 4 kids.
Well, I think it showed the confidence that the show had, and I do think that there were some preconceived notions. It only had a 67% like bar on the trailer on YouTube.
Oh,
But it seems like the
this
audience...
is one of those few to surpass
Yes,
expectations.
that it seems like they are actually enjoying it. Just to get the Rotten Tomatoes score, the audience score is 83%.
I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 for the 2 episodes together, and that's very high for me.
I'm going to be giving it a 7 out of 10. I think you enjoyed it a little bit more than me, but this was definitely better than I thought that it was going to be.
Well, look at the other kids shows that we've done this year. Batman,
Yeah.
Wandla, Knuckles, Spiderwick Chronicles, Davy Jonesy's Locker. I think this tops it.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably. Of all the ones that we've reviewed, this is probably the best kids show. It has a 7.3 on IMDb, around 3,000 reviews, 95% audience score, 95% critic score, which is the second highest. I mentioned how Andor had a 96, but this is actually the second highest out of all of the Star Wars shows. And Forbes titled their review Star Wars: The Next Generation. I'm interested to see where it goes. Skeleton Crew delivers, even if it is a bit jarring to have kids taking on the lead roles. But I didn't even think that it was jarring. I felt like they cast everyone pretty well.
It was jarring to me to see cement. Honestly, to see cement in a Star Wars franchise was odd. I think I also want to give it credit for the music. I think it legitimizes it to be Star Wars, and it feels like a cheap compliment because every Star Wars series would have music, but I feel like a lot of the kid battles and the kid discussions, it is supposed to be a space opera, and I think the operatic like score back in the backing really aids with the joke delivery and me being okay with that. I also like that they showed us like cool iPads of the future or the past and stuff. Like there was new technology they were also including in there. Overall, yeah, 8 out of 10. They lied, they're petty, but they're kids. It's all good. If they were adult characters doing the same thing, I'd probably be a little pissed. And then also the normal criticism, the normal knocks that you could give it, from the tortured Jedi being a repeat character, from Fern feeling like Discount Rey, from the robot being like this super assassin fighting comic relief droid. We've seen that in Andor. We've seen it in Mandalorian. We've seen it now in Skeleton Crew. Like they keep on repeating the same stuff. Normally that would be annoying. It's not here. You also have the kids in the classroom and some of those like fuzzy creatures on the Borgo planet that like, they're like Baby Yoda. And they're like the Ewoks, you know, where it's just cute to be cute.
Yeah.
And it's okay here. So all of that stuff is acceptable, and that's a sign of a good show.
Well, John Watts, he's the one who created the series. He wrote all the episodes. We've talked about him on the Old Man podcast. He wrote all 3 Spider-Man films. The second episode was directed by David Lowery, and the third episode he wrote Pete's Dragon, A Ghost Story, The Old Man with a Gun. So they have the talent behind the camera as well.
I did have a least favorite line. Did you have a least favorite line?
Yeah, when the dad said, "I think you're too old for stories," I feel like that's used in every single film and TV show ever.
But like you said, it's like Charlie Brown. Wah, wah, wah. Like it's the same on purpose. It's supposed to be. But you guys learned, you know what's the last time I heard it was in that not Bad Santa movie, but the Jack Black movie where the kid's dad was telling him to stop believing in Santa. Like, aren't you a little too old for that?
Dear Santa.
And so
yeah.
the kid from that heard the same line and he was the elephant. And you're talking about Wim though, right?
Yep.
My least favorite line was the fact that when they got to, at the end of the first episode, they looked out into the stars and they said, wow, I didn't expect there to be that many of them. Now I understand feeling overwhelmed by where you are, but these kids in their classrooms were being taught about like fungible vectors and like the most crazy stuff. I couldn't keep track of what that droid was trying to teach them, and they were amazed by the fact that there was like a million stars outside. That seems a little strange. That seems a little like forced dialogue there. That was my least favorite line. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.